In last week's video, we went over AB 1482, which is California's statewide rent control ordinance passed in 2020. And if you weren't aware of AB 1482, then chances are you are not aware of the Relocation Assistance for Displaced Tenants Ordinance that was passed in 2019 here in the City of Santa Cruz. So in this video, we're going to dive into what that ordinance means and how it pertains to you, whether you're a tenant, a landlord, or you're a homeowner that's thinking of renting their property here in the City of Santa Cruz. This video is for you. The Relocation Assistance for Displaced Tenants Ordinance is also known as the Large Rent Increase Ordinance. This is an amendment to the municipal code here in the City of Santa Cruz and was passed January 8th of 2019. Since this ordinance is more strict than AB 1482 in several ways, it would take precedence over AB 1482 if you live in the City of Santa Cruz. An example of this would be AB 1482 only applies to properties that are subject to AB 1482, and this ordinance applies to all of the rentals in the City of Santa Cruz. Another example of this would be if your property is subject to AB 1482, you are limited to a 10% annual rent increase. If your property is exempt from AB 1482, you are not limited to how much you can increase your rents, but if you are in the City of Santa Cruz, this ordinance applies to you whether you are exempt from AB 1482 or not exempt from AB 1482. And under this ordinance, you're limited to a 5% annual increase with no more than a 7% increase in a period of 2 years. So there's definitely areas where this ordinance is more strict, and we are going to make you aware of these in this video today. In this video, I'm going to break the ordinance down into two main parts for the sake of clarity. The first part of this video, I'm going to talk about what constitutes a large rent increase under this ordinance and how much relocation assistance a landlord will owe their tenant if they need to vacate due to a large rent increase. In the second part of this video, I'm going to go over what the ordinance says about uninhabitable living conditions and unpermitted units, and if tenants need to vacate due to these circumstances, how much relocation assistance landlords will owe them. All right, what is considered a large rent increase? Now, under this ordinance, whether you're subject to AB 1482 or exempt from AB 1482, it doesn't really matter. If your rental is in the City of Santa Cruz, it falls under this ordinance. And in this ordinance, they are limiting rental increases to 5% annually with a cumulative total of 7% in 2 years. Now keep in mind the 7% in 2 years must be calculated to include the compounding effect of the rent increase in year one. For example, I'm a landlord and I'm charging my tenant $2,000 a month and I want to increase their rents by 5%. That would equal $2,100. Now, if I go the second year and I want to do another rental increase, I need to go back to the original $2,000 to calculate my rental increase. And since I want to keep it under that 7% cap, I'm going to add 1.9% to that $2,000, which is roughly $40, and add that on to the $2,100 total. So my rent increase would be roughly $2,140 for that second year. Another thing to note is that it doesn't have to be a 5% and a 2% increase. It can be any combination of percentages as long as the cumulative total in 2 years is not more than 7%. Now, if a tenant in the City of Santa Cruz is moving out due to a large rental increase over 5% in 1 year or 7% in 2 years, they are entitled to a relocation assistance payment of 2 months of their rent, not including the rental increases. Tenants that are vacating due to a large rental increase are entitled to their relocation assistance payment within 21 days of their giving notice to their landlord of their intent to vacate. Now, tenants that have not been paying their rent are not entitled to relocation assistance. Now, one important thing to note is that tenants who are vacating due to a large rental increase are only entitled to relocation assistance if they give notice to their landlord of their intent to vacate within 60 calendar days after the effective date of said rental increase. If they do not give notice to their landlord within this time frame, it is understood that they have accepted that large rent increase and they are no longer eligible to claim relocation assistance from their landlord. Now, moving on to tenants required to vacate due to hazardous living conditions or illegal use. This ordinance does not define what constitutes hazardous living conditions, nor does it define who is eligible to make those determinations. So obviously in this ordinance there is a lot of gray area, and with gray areas comes subjectivity. So as a landlord, I would want to make sure that your rentals have properly functioning systems, such as sanitation systems is a big one. So whether you're on sewer or you're on septic, making sure that those are functioning properly and not backing up, that's a big one. Making sure your heating systems work, that's another big one. Also, if your home is under the redwoods, making sure that you don't have branches falling down and creating unsafe conditions, or even having trees that fall down, those could also be potentially hazardous situations. So this is another reason why it can be important to have property management that does regular inspections. You might want to do regular pest inspections, regular home inspections, and every once in a while doing a sewer lateral inspection or a septic inspection. Getting regular inspections of your systems done, making sure those are functioning properly, are going to go a long way in mitigating any risks you might have as a landlord. Under this ordinance, illegal use means a unit that is being rented that has not been issued a certificate of occupancy. Now, I'm well aware that here in the city of Santa Cruz, many unpermitted units are being rented. And in fact, many of them are on the city's Section 8 program. I am not telling you to take those off the market. I am simply making you aware of this ordinance and the risks that come along with renting an unpermitted unit. Now, if I was a landlord and I was renting a unit in the city that was unpermitted, I would want to mitigate my risk. And one way that I would do that is I would hire a properly certified home inspector. I would have him go through the unit and look at anything that is unsafe or not up to code. And then I would go through and make sure all of those systems are updated and up to code and safe. I think that would go a long way in reducing your risk under this ordinance. Now, for tenants that are required to vacate due to unsafe or hazardous living conditions or illegal use, they are entitled to housing relocation assistance, which is 3 months rent. This could either be determined by the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development's fair market rent schedule, or 3 months of the actual rent that the tenant was paying at the time of relocation, whichever is greater. This payment must be given within 1 week of the notice to vacate. And proof of payment is required for tenants that are vacating due to unsafe conditions or illegal use. That proof of payment needs to be given to the City of Santa Cruz's planning department, and it can be in the form of a check with a receipt that is signed by the tenant. Now, exceptions to this would be for tenants who are required to vacate due to hazardous living conditions or illegal use. If they did not vacate in a timely fashion after receiving their relocation assistance, they are no longer eligible for payment. If they were in default of the rent payments at the time they were given notice to vacate, they are not eligible to receive relocation assistance. And tenants who have substantially contributed to the unsafe living conditions that have given rise to that abatement, they are no longer eligible to receive that relocation assistance either. Now, I'm going to summarize briefly what we've gone over in today's video. The Relocation Assistance for Displaced Tenants Ordinance applies to anyone who has a rental here in the city of Santa Cruz. That supersedes AB 1482. So whether you're exempt from AB 1482 or subject to AB 1482, you are still subject to this ordinance here in the city of Santa Cruz. And that ordinance falls into two main categories. The first category being large rental increases. Now, a large rental increase is considered to be any increase over 5% in 1 year or 7% in 2 consecutive years. If your tenants are vacating due to a large rental increase, the landlord may be on the hook to pay them 2 months rent that is to be given within 21 calendar days of receiving notice of that tenant's intention to vacate. Now, if that tenant does not give notice to vacate within 60 days of the effective day of that rent increase, they are no longer eligible to receive that relocation assistance. And if that tenant is in default of any rent payments, they are not eligible for any relocation assistance. The second category applies to hazardous living conditions and illegal use. Now, the city doesn't really determine what constitutes hazardous living conditions, so there is a lot of subjectivity there, but it encourages landlords to keep their rental properties up to date and well maintained. But if the tenant is leaving due to illegal use or hazardous living conditions, the landlord may be on the hook to pay them 3 months rent, and that is to be given within 1 week of the tenant's notice to vacate. Now, keep in mind, If that tenant is behind in rent payments, they are not eligible to receive relocation assistance. Also, if the tenant has received the relocation assistance but has failed to vacate in a timely manner, they may become ineligible to receive said relocation assistance. If the tenant has contributed substantially to the conditions which make that property unsafe, they also may be ineligible for relocation assistance. Also, if there were conditions out of control of the property owner that contributed to the hazardous living conditions, the property owner does not owe relocation assistance. An example of this would be a tree falling on the house, or a flood, or a tsunami, something like that. The main takeaways from this video, if you want to boil them down into a few things, are this. If you were a landlord in the city of Santa Cruz, you need to be careful about your rent increases. Keep them under 5% annually and 7% in consecutive 2-year period. It's important to make sure that you're maintaining your property, making sure all the systems function so that tenants cannot make a claim against you as far as hazardous living conditions. And if your property here in the city of Santa Cruz that you're renting out is unpermitted, I think it would be wise to get the advice of a real estate attorney, maybe talk to the planning department, see what it would take to get it permitted, and at the very least, maybe bring a home inspector in to check out the place, bring it up to code, and remediate any hazardous conditions there. Thanks for watching the video today. I hope you found value in it. If you did, please show the like button some love and subscribe to stay up to date with more news and information about all things real estate here in Santa Cruz County. This is Jesse with Collins Properties, and until next time, stay awesome.